Police officers, what's the dumbest thing you've ever seen a criminal do or say? Retired cop here. Boy, do I have some stories. One unpleasant move a guy did was he steals some poor girl's car. It was her first car, she worked full-time, it was a sweet little thing, and we felt so bad, she was crushed. Also in the car for some reason was her cell phone, so a colleague who has the gift of talking nonsense really well calls the number. Dude answers. It goes a little something like this. Cop, mother trucker, you stole my friend's car. Bad guy, witch, I will mess you up, then mess up your witch. Cop, bring it, mother trucker. No cops, no friends, me and you. I'm at the Chevron on Main Street and 5th. Coward, I'm calling your difficult read around. Bad guy, witch, I'm on my way. Click. Me, no heckin' way he's coming. Dude, rounded the corner and pulled into the gas station. We hid our cars behind it, and then when he parked, we boxed him in. He had a gun too, heckin' idiot. On probation, I had a loaded gun. Come to us. I guess when keeping it real, it can go wrong. Story 2. Not a cop but a corrections officer. 2 inmates got into a fight in a hallway. I was the closest to them and only saw the start of the fight out of the corner of my eye. In my report, I wrote that I saw the 2 inmates fall to the ground with name on top of the other inmate. Story 3. A woman is waiting for her DUI trial in the courtroom. The lawyers and judge are milling around and getting their paperwork in order. Trial starts in 10 to 15 minutes. The prosecuting attorney asks her if she wants to take the plea deal one last time. She refuses and goes on about how this is unconstitutional and the police and courts are corrupt and how is she going to take her kid to school, blah 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 blah. She's starting to cause a bit of a scene, yelling, acting like a child, just being generally annoying. Someone in the room gets a whiff of alcohol. She is out on bond, so she can basically be given a PBT, preliminary breath test, at any time for any reason. The judge orders one on her. She registers a 0.226 in court. This woman, who was on trial for DUI, had the audacity to drive to court intoxicated and then moan and groan about how she isn't being treated fairly and we're all corrupt and this is unconstitutional. Not only that, but it explicitly states in your bond conditions that you cannot consume alcohol. So I cuff her and bring her to the jail. She's still running her mouth during the walk over. I had nothing to say. I had absolutely zero sympathy for her. I could barely hold in my own laughter on the walk over to the jail. Story 4. Not a cop, but rode along frequently as part of a training program. The dumbest thing I saw someone do involved one of those dog crates that you can carry for like a small dog, such as a chihuahua. This woman was having a dispute with some people who had their dog in one of those carry kennels sitting on the ground. There were 3 officers at the scene. The woman was given a ticket and tossed it on the ground. She was told, pick that up or you will be arrested for littering. When she picked it up, she kicked the dog kennel hard enough to make it barrel roll. She was immediately and aggressively taken into custody and charged with animal cruelty. She called 911 to say that there were people she didn't know squatting in her garage apartment and they had a knife. We got there and the squatters had tons of regular people belongings that did not match the profile of squatters. Additionally, all of their belongings were strewn along the ground outside in the alleyway. They had texts proving that they had been renting from her and they said that they were 2 days late on rent. She went crazy and threw all of their stuff outside. The knife that they supposedly had was one of their steak knives that had come out of a shelf that she dumped in the alley. She had also allegedly shoved one of them. By the time we had sorted this all out, the woman had vanished. The officer told them to go ahead and put their stuff back inside and that she'd have to evict them. At this point, they didn't want to press any charges, so we just left to drive around and told them to call back if they had more problems. They called back within 10 minutes. She'd come back and shove one of them, throwing another temper tantrum. The ticket she got was for assault by contact and the rest is history. Tossed the ticket on the ground, kicked their dog, and got taken to jail. The best part was that the whole ride to jail, she was continuing her tantrum, asking how she was going to jail when she called the police and she didn't do anything wrong. No matter how many times she said that she didn't do anything wrong or that she shouldn't go to jail though, that's exactly where she ended up. Story 5. In law enforcement, but not a regular cop, we were in the middle of a search warrant looking for a schmuck. Lots of substance convictions in the past. Found a still burning joint in the ashtray in the living room, but no sign of the guy in the house. I'm 99% sure he's in the roof cavity. I announced to my partner, I think he's up there. Should we look? Suddenly, the ceiling starts talking. Hear the softest? No. Heh, nonsense. Can they hear me? Nah, it's all good. So my partner said, nah, man, I didn't hear that guy say we shouldn't look up there. The ceiling replies with, sweet, I knew they wouldn't find me. Needless to say, we looked and pulled a very, very spiked guy out from under the insulation bats. Story 6. A friend who was an officer told me this one a little bit ago. He was driving near where a known car thief lives, so he stops by, an SUV in the driveway with no tags. He walks up, runs the VIN, stolen. Now the property had a house on it, and then out back, a small mother-in-law suite where it said thief lived. The officer walks out back, knocks, and then hears a car door. The officer starts running, the engine starts, and yep, the thief is driving away in the stolen SUV. The officer knows where he ditches stolen cars at, so he has an officer stake out that area. Sure enough, 2 hours later, the SUV rolls up with the Jeep following it. The SUV driver wipes down the dash, wipes down the outside door handle, and gets in the Jeep. The officer pulls them over and arrests them both. Why both? Well, the Jeep is stolen. The officer runs her license, sends another officer to her address, and guess what? She had a stolen car at her place too. 3 stolen cars recovered, 2 people in jail, all because one officer decided to stop by a thief's last address. Story 7. My BIL is a cop in a small town. He pulled a car over one night, recognized a kid, smelled substances inside the car and said, "Give me the substances and I won't search your car, won't give you a ticket, and you can be on your way." The kid fights him, says he doesn't know what that smell is, there's no substances, and how can I trust that you won't take me to the station if I give it to you? BIL promises again that if he hands him the substances, he will let him go, no questions asked. The kid keeps being a moron. BIL searches a car and finds many more substances hidden all over, as well as substances. BIL says, "Alright, let's go to the station." The kid gets upset and says, "You said you weren't going to do this, see? I couldn't trust you." I groan and laugh every time I think of that. What a dummy. Story 8. I was in the police at the time. In the middle of the night, my partner and I found a car in a cemetery. Stolen cars were dumped there regularly. The car had its windows down and it had only recently been left there. It was still warm to the touch. It didn't flag up as stolen, and through the window I could see a substances pipe in plain view. That gives us the ability to search the car. Inside, we find a bunch of substance pipes, 3.5 grams of substances, and a handgun. There was also a tablet and phone that was unlocked, and while we were searching the car, the tablet kept on receiving messages from people trying to score substances. I had a quick look through the phone and was able to figure out that the owner of the car had come out from the city. I worked rurally at the time to make a score from one of the local gangs, but the gang didn't want her turning up, so arranged to meet her at the cemetery and conduct business somewhere else. I leave a business card under the wipers, not my card, but the station's, and on the rear I wrote that she, the owner of the car, should come down to the station if she wants to get her stuff back. And sure enough, she did. At 9 the next morning, spiked out looking for her substances and gun. Story 9. Not my story, but my police officer friends. He had gone in to arrest someone for dealing substances. He was in full uniform while someone else had already been in there undercover. The substance dealer looks at the undercover police officer and says, "You're undercover." "Yes, well done." He looks at my uniformed friend and says, "You're undercover too." He was not. Then he looks at someone else, not a police officer, and says, "And you?" The guy responds with, "How am I an undercover police officer? I just bought substances off of you." And that's how they made an unexpected arrest at that raid. Story 10. So we were partying at one of our friends' place, and cops stopped by to check what's with all the commotion. I know that because they told me that there weren't any complaints or anything. So I am dealing with the cops when my friend, who was spiked freaking behind, decides to join in. He starts speaking in our native tongue, which the cops don't understand. Anyhow, one of the cops raises his right hand and waves 3 fingers in front of my friend's face, asking him, "How many fingers are these?" To which my friend replies, still in our native language, thankfully, "Why do you drink so much that you are even unable to count your own fingers, sir?" Story 11. Not a police officer, but my father was a 911 dispatch operator. My dad was working one night and he gets a call from a man who was obviously intoxicated. "Dad, 911, what is your emergency?" Intoxicated man, yeah, I think I just heard a red car crash." "Dad, you heard a red car crash?" Intoxicated man, "Yep." "Dad, okay, police are on their way." Click. My dad finds out later that this dude was driving intoxicated and crashed his car not far from his house. The guy decides to get out of his car, stumble home, and dial 911 to report the fact that he heard a car crash. In his intoxicated mind, he figured he'd report the crash as someone who heard it and he'd get off somehow. But he had to specify the color because apparently a red car crashing sounds different than a blue car crashing. Story 12. Not really a criminal, but blew my mind at the stupidity of it. A dad had full custody of his son because the baby mama is homeless and under the influence. The baby mama is allowed supervised visits at dad's house a couple of hours per week. During the holidays, dad lets the baby mama take the son out unsupervised, violating his own court order, and later refused to return the son and would not pick up her phone. Dad says he has no idea where they could be. I take a missing persons form, and a couple of hours later, I was about to file the form and dispatch tells me to call an officer from another city. The father went to his son's grandmother's house, which was located in that other city. The son is there, but the baby mama refused to turn over her son. It's a big stupid mess. After talking to that officer, we get everything sorted and dad was finally reunited with the son. I filled out a missing person cancellation form and turned both forms in. A few days later, I see on my MDT a pending call from that same address for the same exact reason. I was about ready to drive over there and yell at the father for being an idiot, but I was on another call and one of my partners took the call. Story 13. Not a cop, but my brother was. He told me that this one time he took lunch at Popeyes while in uniform except for the hat. Once inside, the cashier started taking his order, then stopped halfway and turned to a coworker that just walked up. I don't remember exactly what was said, but basically the guy taking my brother's order asked the other guy if he took his substances. The other guy says yes, but he didn't smoke at all and proceeded to hand him over the substances. The guy then says cool, not to worry that he's got another stash in his car for emergencies like this. My brother then said that he just wanted to eat some lunch. The guys then realized he was a cop. One guy said something like, not again. As my brother started arresting the cashier, he said that he thought my brother was a security guard. So my brother, just trying to make a joke out of it, says, oh, you smoke substances with your security guard? To which the guy says, no, just my manager and his buddy. But the real funny part was when he asked another employee there if the security guard was around, and the employee said they didn't have one and didn't know what that cashier was talking about. Story 14. Not a cop, but I know for sure this is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen someone do. Several years ago, some friends and I were hanging out when my friend brings along this new coworker trying to get him out and about. Immediately, we all knew something was off about this guy, but whatever. We were out until 3 in the morning before we call it a night. My friend is bringing me home and just being an idiot, decides to swerve down the street before getting to my house. Well, we pass a cop car, and the car hits its lights but had to turn around. By this point, I'm out of the car when the cop is pulling up on us, and this new guy makes a run for my front door. The cop jumps out of his vehicle and demands all of us on the ground, just about waking up everyone in my neighborhood. Turns out this dude had a warrant out for his arrest, and he decided bolting out of the car was the smartest move to make when a cop pulled up on us. Story 15. Not a police officer, but an ex of mine was out wandering in a wooded area of their town, intoxicated off their face. At some point, my ex, let's call him Schmuckwaffle, passes out in a field near a school and some apartments, and his friends just leave him there. Someone sees Schmuckwaffle laying in the field and calls the cops, worried that it's remains. The cop comes, nudges the person, and Schmuckwaffle starts to wake up. Blackout intoxicated, he leaps up, all aggressive, like causing the cop to jump back and place his hand on his nightstick. Schmuckwaffle intoxicatedly screams, "What are you gonna do, hit me with your stick?" and charges the cop, who then attempts to swing the stick. He punches the cop, runs about 10 feet, then lays back down and falls asleep. The cop pepper sprays and arrests him. Schmuckwaffle remembers nothing. A detailed police report is how I know what happened. It 100% sounds like the stupid thing Schmuckwaffle would do frequently. He had to go to court, charged with assault on an officer. The officer insisted charges be dropped to intoxicated in public, since he wasn't entirely responsible for his actions because of how intoxicated he was. After that, anytime he told the story, it was about some schmuck cop, when in reality, that cop saved his rear. Story 16. I used to ride my bike to and from work back home, and most of my route was passing through horse country, lots of small ranches and stuff. I was pedaling home at 1 a.m., Sonic closes at midnight back home, when I saw 2 of my neighbors' horses being ridden very poorly by 2 strangers. Now, I'm not a horse expert, but the fact the saddles were on backwards and not actually connected at all was my first clue something was amiss. And the fact one of them was yelling, "Damn it, Jim, I ain't going to jail over a damn horse," over and over was my second clue. So I called the cops, then my neighbor who owns the horses. Unfortunately, my neighbor got to them before the cops did, so the cops had quite a mess on their hands. I ended up almost an hour late getting home because I had to help get the horses back. My neighbor got his own ride in a squad car. Both intoxicated people needed an ambulance. His wife was able to help me get the tack off and brush them down. She was wheelchair bound but told me what to do. My neighbor was grateful once bail was posted and hooked me up with free rides to and from work whenever I needed, and I got to learn quite a bit about horsemanship. I heard the cops had a laugh. Story 17. Many years ago, I was a paramedic in NYC and got involved with the stabbing theft. It was a chain snatch gone bad, and the snatcher and the person who was targeted both injured one another. The one kid lost his femoral artery and passed away on the street. The spread of the bodily fluid on wet concrete was extensive. It seemed like 20 people had passed away there. The attempted snatcher took off running, but the cops were pretty sure he didn't get far, so we all fanned out to look for a bodily fluid trail or his unconscious self. Long story short, there was a chrome plating and engine machine shop on one corner of the block. The kid had crawled up a stack of pallets and across a storage container and pushed in a jealousy-type window. He didn't know it was over the acid dip tank that they put big diesel blocks in to clean them before work. He put up a hell of a fight trying to get out, but was found Monday morning partially affected by the chemicals. Story 18. Need to clarify that I am not a cop, but was able to witness the events that unfolded. Loss prevention and 2 cops had escorted a woman into the side office of our store. She made her presence known by her constantly yelling and screaming, "I didn't do anything wrong, you've got to let me go." She was caught shoplifting on site and was also a well-known offender. Turns out she had hit the whole center that afternoon. She constantly refused to answer their questions but kept repeating, "You've got to let me go." One of the cops humored her and asked, "Why do we need to let you go?" "I'm in court, you've got to let me go. I'm on my lunch break, I can't be late." Last I heard, when they walked her out of the center, she made a break for it straight back to the courthouse. Story 19. Not a cop, but told to me by a cop. A friend's grandmother's house was abandoned and waiting to be sold. Squad of thieves broke in and took the valuable stuff. Then when they realized no one was using the house, they started staying there and bringing items that they had stolen from other houses to stash there. The cops came with dogs. The crook ran from the dog upstairs and out of the balcony door where there was once a balcony. Instead, he ran out a second-story door to nowhere and fell 2 stories. The police didn't have so much trouble catching him after that. He was squatting in there and had looted the house, so how did he not know that the door went nowhere? Story 20. Crossing the border from USA going into Canada when we were 20, since the legal drinking age there was 19. We were always too smart to say we were going to the bars though, so we would always make something else up like the casino or a nice restaurant. It always felt like we were trying to outsmart the border police, so we always got a little nervous talking at the booth. I was a passenger this time. Border cop, citizenship, driver, USA, border cop, any substances, alcohol, weapons in the car. Driver, no. Border cop, where are you guys going tonight? Driver, Canada. The border cop gave us a sigh and a look like, screw these kids from the US. Now if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 21. I'm not a police officer, however I have a crazy idiot of an older brother. The cops are investigating a carjacking in the area and are trying to locate the car. A popular model too, a Nissan Altima. The cops are just checking the place of my brother's car. Again, the lunatic idiot comes out and cursing the cops out. Everything was recorded by the cops' cams and his friend's phone. My favorite part was, "You communist!" and he proceeded to swing at the cops. Then he starts crying out for my parents and that these cops are racist. We are Hispanic. The cops dropped the assault charges, however he's being charged with interfering with an investigation. The schmuck is actually trying to fight this currently, saying they used police brutality on and targeted him. I'm once again siding with the police on this one, buddy. Story 22. I don't know if this fits here, but it's sort of along the lines of criminals saying dumb things. This goes back a long time, but my dad tells a story of when photocopiers first came to be used by the police. A senior detective would bring in guys he knew to be break and enter guys and sit them down, then ask to see the watch or jewelry, etc. they had on them. He would then tell them he is going to go to the new stolen item detector, the photocopier, and run a search. After writing stolen on a sheet of paper and photocopying the watch on top, he would return to the interview room and tell the person that the gig is up, they know the watch is stolen, and it is better for you to just tell us where it came from. Apparently, 9 out of 10, the guy would confess to several crimes, assuming the stolen item detector knew all of his wrongdoings. Story 23. Back in the 70s when cops had more leniency than they do today as far as letting people off the hook, my uncle was a sheriff's deputy for the county I live in. He said he was following behind a car one afternoon and said the driver was clearly under the influence because he had been weaving back and forth and failing to maintain his lane. About the time my uncle was going to pull him over anyways, the guy ran his car up onto the median and stalled out his car. So my uncle pulls up behind him and flips his lights on. My uncle said by the time he had walked up to this guy's driver's window, this guy, intoxicated as nonsense, had managed to climb into the passenger seat and get his St. Bernard into the driver's seat. My uncle leaned down and asked what the heck was going on here, and he said this guy, with a straight face and serious as could be, responded with, "I told that damn dog he wasn't going to make that curve." My uncle doubled over laughing and gave the guy and his dog a ride home in his cop car and called a tow truck to tow his car. He told the man that that was the best line he had ever heard in his entire career. Story 24. Well, I am an officer in a small town and I deal with substances a lot, so I couldn't even begin to say all the absurd nonsense I've heard. However, this one call stands out. I'm dispatched to a house for a 911 hang-up call. I pull up to the residence and someone yells, "We're in here." My backup ran up to the door to see two men run out the back door, so I haul freaking rear to the back and see them both telling them politely to get the screw over here. I asked the elderly man what's going on. He said, for sure, domestic. The young guy says nothing happened and so does everyone else there. Well, I'm fed up and start really hitting this elderly guy with questions until he finally tells me that his son, the younger guy, beat the heck out of everyone in the house and that his ribs feel broken. So naturally, I tell my backup and arrest the younger guy. Side note, none of the people that were harmed wanted to press charges. On the way to jail, this guy starts crying his eyes out. And I always try to empathize in some form and be nice. I mean, I already got him hooked up and on the way to jail, so my adrenaline is gone. Anyways, he's crying like a little baby, and his reaction to my nice words, which were, look at it this way, you're going away for a bit, but it's a chance to straighten your things out. His immediate reply, sobbing with snot and tears, says, nah man, screw you, you'll never know what it's like to be a big dog. I caps the last part because he freaking screamed it at the top of his sobbing lungs. I say, okay little buddy, let's just get you to your bed. The end. It's not too wild, but it still makes me laugh. Story 25. Once upon a time, somebody broke into my car while I was under the influence of a heavy dose. I went directly to the station with a buddy of mine to file the report. A police station with very particular acoustics that made it almost impossible to whisper without everyone hearing you very well. I had trouble giving my details because every time the officer asked me a question, like my name, date of birth, etc., I felt compelled to fish out my ID card to double check that I was getting it right, which was clearly generating some suspicion. While the officer was completing a form, my buddy suddenly pulled me aside, shows me a small pack straw in the palm of his hand, and whispers, oh my god, I still have some substances, speed, on me. The officer had been so busy writing, somehow she didn't notice, but the anxiety of him saying it out loud made my world spin. A short time passed, seeming like ages, and then he looked at me again and said, darn, my hands are really dirty. I looked at my own and exclaimed very loudly and clearly, these aren't my fingers. Story 26. Obligatory, not a police officer, but post. I was a manager at a fast food place, and one night we have a carload of guys come through the drive-thru. They seemed a bit rowdy, but I didn't think anything of it. I continued doing banking stuff. The cashier serves them, closes and locks the window, and then comes over to the office to tell me that one of the guys had a machete and said he wanted the money from the till. Apparently the guy said he was just joking. I called the police to get someone out ASAP. I don't care if you're joking. I was told to just continue to act like nothing was wrong. I handed out their food, etc. They paid for it all. What the heck? I gave a description of their car. It was bright green, so it stuck out. The guys drive off. No more issues. A few minutes later, 3 or 4 police cars show up with lights and sirens going, and we hear a commotion in the parking lot, so we went and looked out the window. The car was parked out front while the guys ate their food. I haven't seen anyone that dumb in a long time. Story 27. Many years ago, I used to work for the court service, so I would get talking to the cops about the latest ridiculous nonsense. My favorite was a couple of students who had their house broken into and everything stolen. The cop said when he went to take statements, etc., these 2 guys were sitting cross-legged on the floor because the place had been completely emptied. Over the next couple of days, he gets another call out, same block, but the place next door. He meets the guy at the door who was making a noise complaint for the 2 students next door. The cop knocks on the students' door. It would appear that they are still without possessions with the exception of a stereo someone had lent them, as they literally had nothing left, and they were getting intoxicated with music on to drown their sorrows. They apologize, turn down the music, and close the door. The cop goes back to the complainer to tell them they will now be quiet, and as he's having this conversation, he can see in the hallway lots of pieces of electronics, furniture, etc. As he's having this conversation, he looks through his notebook and is ticking all these items off the list of stolen stuff from next door. The students got their stuff back. Lesson? If you're going to burgle your next door neighbor, don't invite the cops around to complain about them. Story 28. One night, another officer and I had been tracking a stolen cell phone and narrowed it down to one problem complex in one of the more rough parts of town. As we're waiting outside for the phone to move again, these kids pull up to the exit in a black Kia and immediately stop when they see our patrol car. They then try to throw the car in reverse and all bail. There are like 4 jumping out, and the front passenger starts rolling around on the ground as the car starts rolling backwards due to being on an incline. He nearly gets run over, and we drive up and run after them on foot. We lose them in the building hallways. We end up tracking the driver to an apartment because we were still tracking the phone. He had gotten ahead of us, run into his grandmother's apartment, ditched his clothes, and tried to jump into the shower. As we're knocking on the door, his grandmother answers and says he just got home a bit ago and that there wasn't a stolen phone in the house. She even brings us his dirty clothes to prove it, even though he's trying to pull the whole "those aren't my pants" nonsense. We hit the ringer on the phone and it goes off in her place and she's shocked. We walk into the kitchen and find the phone in a cereal box on top of the fridge. so he gets locked up. As we're putting him into the patrol car, we find out the Kia rolled down the incline into two parked cars. His aunt pulls up and realizes he took her car without her knowing. He got charged with all of it, and I'm pretty sure his aunt was going to try and make him pay for all the damages. Also had a guy end up in the hospital with a broken jaw, dislocated shoulder and wrist, and giant gash in his chin due to falling 12 feet off of a ledge as he was running away from a car crash. His head had landed on some cinder blocks. We had tried to pull him over for an expired license plate, but he fled and took a turn too fast. He wrecked into two parked cars. It was dark, and he told us he kept looking back as he was running, so he never saw the ledge he fell off of. Why did he flee? Because he didn't have a driver's license. Story 29. So there I was on New Year's Eve. I spent the evening with my buddies and was getting ready to drive home. At the time, I didn't drink, but my new roommate did, so my friend gave me the open bottle of champagne in case she wanted some since we had quite a bit left. On the way home on the freeway, I must have turned the corner too sharply and gone out of the lines because the state patrolman behind me flashed his lights. So the officer shows up, and the first thing he says is, "Hey buddy, why the heck didn't you pull onto the shoulder?" Since I was in the leftmost lane of the two-lane highway at the time, I pulled over into the median. I guess I had been so startled I hadn't thoroughly thought about it. The next thing the officer did was gesture at the comically large, half-empty bottle of champagne looming in the passenger seat and say, "Is that an open alcoholic beverage?" To which I smartly explained that I had put the cork back in it, so no. He asked to see my license. I handed over my license and with a quick glance told me it was invalid. You see, I had received a speeding ticket a few months beforehand and had been paying it off in installments, but I missed one. This was during the recession and times were lean, and an officer pulled me over shortly after and told me my license had been suspended until I got back and he had taken a hole punch to my license. Just stamped a round little hole right through it, apparently to mark it as invalid. Well, I got back on the payment plan and had paid off my ticket, but nobody had mentioned to me that I needed to go to the DMV and request a new license. So I never did because it just hadn't occurred to me even though my license literally had a hole in it. After sputtering my excuses to the trooper, he soon came to the conclusion that I wasn't intoxicated but was merely very stupid and more trouble than I was worth. He told me that he was going to let me off with a warning and that he was not giving me permission to drive the rest of the way home, but also told me that my car couldn't just sit there and he was going to drive off, and should my car find a way home somehow, that it was none of his business. Nice guy. Story 30. My aunt loves telling this story. She was called to an intoxicated in public on a suburban street. She arrives and sees this guy stumbling around the street singing at the top of his lungs, so she switches on the lights and he runs directly into a sign. I guess this got his intoxicated mind addled because he got up and ran straight to the police car. He goes to the driver's window and yells, "Can you give me a ride? The police are looking for me." My aunt says, "Sure, get in the back," and unlocks the door. He gets in and she drives him to the station. Story 31. Not a Leo. Mine was, "We're trying to take the back roads home." I live in a place that if you want to drive home without touching the interstate or state route, you could by taking a back road that bypasses the standard thoroughfares. My friend and roommate at the time and myself were at a mutual acquaintance's home about 15 miles away from where we lived at the time. We drank too much and also smoked too much of a medicinal herb before it was legal to even smoke it medicinally. I was caught in a speed trap where just after a major intersection, the speed limit dropped to 10 miles per hour just after the light. I passed by going the speed limit, but after I was going 15 miles per hour over the drop-in limit, as soon as we were pulled over, my friend starts exaggerating that he's about to wrench out my passenger side. This exaggeration saved us, for the cop was in an area where he shouldn't have been because the whole time I was pulled over, I was passing the field sobriety test and he said that I made the right decision by not letting him drive. But because I said that we were trying to take the back road home, that he knew we were screwed up, he gave us the option to go to the gas station 200 yards away from where he pulled us over, and if my vehicle had been moved before 8 a.m. the next morning, they would be coming by my house to arrest me. We took him up on his offer and parked at the station, called his brother and mine. My brother agreed to pick us up, and that's how I got out of a DUI. Story 32. Obligatory mention that I'm not a cop, but took a forensic science class in high school where we had the police chief come and talk about some public cases with us. A story that he threw in for fun was one about a guy who tried to rob a 7-Eleven. The robber's first mistake was trying to do it after 9 p.m., where a sign on the door explicitly said, "We don't carry more than $20 in cash after 9 p.m. So when he barged in with a ski mask and a gun, he already was bound to have a bad time. He waves his gun around, demands cash from the overworked and mostly confused guy working the register who shrugs and starts packing all the money into a paper bag. While this disguised would-be thief is waiting for that, he suddenly grabs a six-pack of beer and drops it on the counter and demands, "I'm taking the booze too." The cashier, apparently a genius, simply asks, "Can I see your ID for that?" And the ski mask gunman hands over his actual driver's license to the clerk, who memorizes the name and address and hands it back, saying everything is in order. The robber leaves with cash and booze, and if I remember correctly, the cops were waiting for him when he got home. Amazing. Story 33. Substances traffic stop. I pulled a guy over and the car reeked of substances. As I talked to the driver, I could not only smell it, I saw it sitting on the cup holder. I asked the driver to step out. There was a female passenger up front as well. He declined it being his and also said it wasn't hers. I told him that it's in a motor vehicle, so it's both of theirs unless someone claims it. I placed him in the rear of my squad car. I read him Miranda, and he said he wouldn't talk to me anymore. I pulled out the female, and she said it wasn't hers as well. The male in my car called me back over and said he doesn't want her to go to jail. I told him I can't talk to him about the incident because he didn't waive his Miranda warning. He then asked me if he could talk to her. I walked her over and let them talk. She explained to him that she might get in trouble over this because she was in the car. He replied, "I don't know why you would get in trouble. The substances is mine." Story 34. Not a police officer but worked as a guard in a Swedish prison a while back. This occurred during my first year. I was in the office in one of the workshops where only staff is allowed. Suddenly, an inmate comes and knocks on the door. He seemed quite stressed and was screaming for someone to open the door. I open it and ask him to calm down, to which he replied by pulling me and saying, "You must stop him." Me thinking there was some kind of fight going on in the workshop, I start running with the inmate. I'm also being followed by a few other guards that were with me in the staff room. I cannot, with words, describe the scene that I witnessed now. One of the inmates, with a lesser intellect, has pulled off a hose to a machine that operates by hydraulic fluid. There's oil all over the floor, and he's sitting in the middle of it, singing and sort of showering in it. At this, all the guards arrive, and we are just staring. 90% of the inmates are laughing their ears off, and all this guy is saying is that he read somewhere that oil is good for the skin, and he found plenty in the machine. He was going to be a free man in a few days and wanted to have nice skin for his girlfriend when they met up. Well, we had to close the workshop and he had to go clean himself. The rest of the inmates got the day off. Story 35. Not the cop, but the criminal here. It was one of those times that I got ridiculously intoxicated and walked home. My apartment was at the 4th floor of a building that had similar interior layouts on each floor. That day, I was so intoxicated I mistakenly went to the unoccupied 5th floor apartment. After seeing that I couldn't unlock the door, I assumed the obvious, that there's something wrong with my key, and called the dude you call when you're locked out of your home. He comes, opens the door, and I find myself into an empty apartment. Thinking that I got robbed, I called the police and gave a report, all the while slurring, double explaining, and acting like any blind, intoxicated person who just got robbed to the floor nails. All this naturally lasted quite some time, as you can imagine, until the girl of the 6th floor happened to pass through the staircase, gave a look to the whole site, and hesitatingly said, "You're on the wrong floor." One of the cops was still imitating some of my previous acts and outbursts while laughing his rear off as they were getting into their car 5 floors down. It was a soul-crushing defeat. Story 36. Worked for a rural sheriff's office. Me and my partner were running radar on the highway when I stopped a Suburban for speeding. The driver pulls over and doesn't let the car come to a stop before throwing it in park. As I exit my vehicle, I can hear her yelling and screaming in the car, so I call my partner for backup. I make contact with the driver and she continues to scream about how she's late and wasn't speeding. I stopped her for 20 over. When my partner arrives, she starts crying and says, "I don't know why I'm being treated this way. I'm a white woman." When she received her ticket, she threw her coffee cup into the passenger floor, causing it to shatter and explode coffee all over her own car. She came to court and asked for a bench trial. When I went to play the dash cam footage, she changed her plea to guilty. Turns out she was the wife of an important member of the community. Well, if you like these stories, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.